It's Monday morning. We worked Saturday and Sunday at Ascot Racecourse, and this morning it's going to be, well, when I did check earlier on the sat nav, a 40-minute trek into Shepperton to do a couple of rooms there for a contact to build a guy that gives me a shout and lives in that local area. So let's get there. We've apparently got a couple of rooms, so I need to get them banged out as quick as I can because I get married in 5 days, and I had a phone call from another regular customer who wants me to squeeze a bathroom in or something. 2 jobs to do in 5 days. Let's get there and find out what's going on, shall we? Before we start moaning and complaining about the terribly humongous workload we have to get through in such a short period of time. Right, let's do it. Let's stop nattering. Let's go. So here we are in Shepperton. Just pulled up outside the property. I'm a little bit early, so I'm just gonna have a little chat with you here for a second or two. So always managed to fit something about Star Wars into these films. So we're in Shepperton. For me, Shepperton is probably famous for Shepperton Studios. And of course, that is where they filmed a lot of the original 1970s, 1977 Star Wars, I believe. And the original Stormtrooper outfit was called the Shepperton because it was made here, it was cast here by some guy. I'm not too sure the exact history of it, but I'm pretty sure that if you do try to purchase a Stormtrooper outfit, it's the Shepperton. Okay, so here we are inside the property, and let's have a look what's going on, shall we? So these walls are bare plaster and probably have a very high suction rate, the same as the ceiling. It had some sort of Santex paint on it, but it's come off clean as a whistle, and the guys have scrimmed up for me already. So fairly sizable room. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4 on this section, and then we got another bit around here as well. So the ceiling's a good size, especially when it may have quite a bit of suction on it, like it has because it's bone dry plaster. So what we need to do is reduce the suction, isn't it? And so you need a primer. I'm not going to go into one about SBR and PVA, which one's better. I'm going to use PVA, and I've already advised the builders here to give it a couple of watery coats, a little bit thinner than usual, of PVA before I get here. Although it will liven up again, it does kill the suction. Multiple layers of PVA will reduce the suction more and more the more PVA you put on there, especially if you do let it dry between putting the coats on. SBR is probably a little bit more effective, but it can kill too much suction, so it's just whatever you prefer. So, like I say, all these walls have had a good coat of this PVA here, so we can see now that they've done it how, well, it's quite thick. You couldn't have put that on there because that would be making a skin on the wall if you put it on that thick. And by touching it with a wet finger, we can see if that changes colour. So it's not changing colour very fast, so I'm going to assume they've got a pretty good seal on there already. But yeah, like I say, this has been done twice before I got here, so it's had a good chance to cure, and I'm going to PVA it all again myself. So that will probably be the first thing I do and get out. Another thing to take into consideration here is there's some old coving, and along here the edge isn't all that good, to be honest with you, probably because it's got quite a bit of paint build up on it, etc, etc. So that might be a little bit tricky to keep looking neat, but we'll continue. I'll probably show that, and we'll be brushing that in and stuff. Some old tape around this window, a little bit of a gap here. That's been left on, it's masking tape that's been left on too long, and it's actually really bonded on there a bit too much. That's going to be a bit of an effort to get that off, but we'll probably tape up that again. So the guys here have actually done the bonding for me already. I'm assuming they've PVA'd over that, yes they have, and he's done quite an impressive corner on there, hasn't he? Like, he must have struck a piece of wood up there and used that as a guide. So I think this is Making it here soon, anyway. So, yeah. There we go, a bit of new boardwork here, as you can see they've scrimmed up for me already. The boardwork here, just being regular old plasterboard, does not need any priming at all. The only other thing of concern is these two pipes here, look, that have been boxed in and they're very, very hot. I can feel there's a lot of heat coming off of them. I'm going to assume, although it doesn't look like it happened before, that it's going to be much easier just to get a bit of board straight across here, and it'll be much less complicated on the eye, I'd say. So if this is going to be reboxed in, I'm going to assume they're going to run it into this wall here and just lose this little bit of a gap. So that's it. Floor, I'll throw a couple of dust sheets down probably, just to soak up any moisture. I try not to be too messy. Some cracks in the walls. These up here they'll be probably in this old age home house, this will probably be a concrete lintel up here, and with movement, quite often you get these cracks above the windows. See, there's two there as well. Right, let's get on, shall we? So I started PVAing the ceiling, and it's still pulling a little bit. You can see here, look, there's definite, I haven't hit there. So where it's darkening up, we can see that PVA is still actually getting through and into that surface. SBR kills a lot of suction. PVA leaves a bit of suction, so it depends how you like to work. If you don't mind a bit of suction, PVA is fine. If you want to kill all the suction, SBR will be your choice. Now, I'm gonna keep an eye on this, because I'm used to using PVA all the time, and I'm going to take a note and watch how fast this PVA starts drying up on the ceiling, because you're supposed to go over PVA when it's tacky, but you can let it go pretty much touch dry, because it will liven back up when the moisture from the plaster gets on there. So yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on this, and because I'm used to using PVA, watch how fast it pulls in. If it pulls in a little bit quick, I'll probably give it another coat, because I want to be able to judge to get this suction. It's quite a big ceiling, so I probably want to kill the suction down quite a bit to give me the time to get across it. So when it comes down to plastering stuff, especially when you're renovating something that's old and it's not new, it's all about preparation really. The preparation is literally half of it, and if you don't get your preparation right, you could find yourself in trouble. Now, it doesn't hurt to kill too much suction on a ceiling like this. You'll be finding yourself in a much more agreeable position if it's just hanging around a bit, rather than it going off on you really fast because you didn't kill enough suction. You will probably come out with some choice words and be, very, very upset and pushed and sweating, and you'll just won't be having a very nice time if this ceiling starts pulling in too quickly because you didn't kill enough suction. Now, using SBR is quite thin anyway, so it does get into the depth of the plaster or the porous surface, whatever it is you're going over. PVA tends to be quite a bit thicker and does require watering down to your taste, okay? Now, if you're going over something which is really, really high suction, such as this ceiling is, then you will do well to knock up that PVA wetter so that it actually gets into the actual surface and doesn't just sit on the top and create a skin, okay? Because then we're back to the same problem we had in the first place, And if the paint goes on too thick, too quick, this is why you have to miscoat things, because you need that paint to go into that dry plaster and become part of it, not just sit on the surface. Another thing to take notice of whilst we are here on PVA. So this is, I believe this is Seraphite, is it? It's not the multi-finish. This is done old school. And you can see that when they've done it, there's that's when they didn't have beads. Look at this corner, it's all chipped and stuff like that. So these would have been done in the old way, casting a piece of wood up either side. Very, very time consuming. Now see, we got all these hairline cracks in there. I mean, what can we do about that? You can get sheets of mesh and stuff to go over it, but quite often when they're this minor, the PVA, or whatever the bonding agent is you're using, gets in there and will start stabilising all those, okay? And there's so many of them that it's all over the wall, so, you know, it's how far do you want to go with it. They've got, the builder has scrimmed up these, and they've got these more obvious ones. So yeah. Now we come over to this thing. So this looks like a hairline crack, okay, but it's not. If we look at it, that's a blockwork crack, because we can see here, this must have been a window at some point. So this crack, we see we've got the old style plaster, and here we've turned pink. So this has been remedied at a later stage. This is the gypsum product. This is something older, I think it's called Cerafite. So this, even though it looks like a small crack, look at it, you can see it's taking the shape of the old window. That needs some fibre tape on it. So another little point to add whilst we are prepping up in here. So we've got all this original coving up, and they are going to put, it's not me, they are going to put the coving up in this area after I have plastered it, and that's just the way that the builder wants to do it, so I am not going to argue with him. Now, it looks to me, because this is going to have coving across it, they haven't bothered putting some scrim up there. But even if that is being coved, it is well worth putting the scrim tape up there, because it's going to help hold that board to the wall. You know, it does strengthen things up, and it will make life a lot easier for you. If you start trying to plaster that and your plaster starts disappearing into this void, even though it's going to be coved over completely, you're not going to see this corner at all. But yeah, your plaster start disappearing into there, it will get lumpy, and as you start troweling up, you can collect up lumps and drag them across your ceiling. Just makes life a lot easier if you do actually scrim things like that up. There's a big hole there, look. So that's what we're going to do. And also, as well, as I noticed earlier, these windows obviously are not original, and there's quite a gap there, so it'd be worth getting a little bit of scrim just to come up and touch the window frame, because again, this deficit here is going to cause you issues, and a little bit of scrim in there is going to help you bridge that gap. Okay, so we've been around everything with PVA, and for my liking, that PVA is drying up a little bit too quick for my liking. Maybe with hindsight, SBR might have been a better choice in here. For efficiency in killing more suction with less visits to the wall with a roller. But another thing, a downside I call it to SBR, is it is so strong, you know. In here it's probably not so much of an issue because we're down to bare floorboards. But I'm using that big roller and I'm wazzing that PVA across the ceiling, and I can feel bits of spray of it coming in like that. Tiny little mists come down, hitting the hairs on my arms, some bits might get spraying on my face, a few drips here and there. If that was SBR, I'd be much more concerned, because PVA does come out in the shower in the evening. SBR, you get that stuff on you, it's on you for the next 2 or 3 days. Of course, I always forget, because I really don't like them at all, the grits. You can get a multitude of different sorts of grit primers now, which are suitable for different situations. They might do a thinner one now, where the grit isn't quite so gritty. I don't like it for skimming. I don't mind the grits if you need to prepare some high suction blocks for render, a big coat of plaster, something deep, but for setting and skimming, I don't like that stuff very much. And again, it doesn't come off in the shower very well. You can get blue grit, you can get red grit, you can get green grit, you can mix them together. I see some mate using purple grit. I made purple grit. I'm not even up in Scotland, I think you can get tartan grit. Okay, so I've given this a good couple of coats, and I'm giving it another one for luck as well. So I've just been over this ceiling 3 times, and on my last visit, I have thickened up the PVA to be a little bit stronger and put a bit more of a thicker coat on there. And as you can see, it is hanging around. There's still some white areas, so I'm quite happy that we've killed the suction down to a better rate. That's going to allow us a bit of time to play with it a bit and get it under control before it all goes off. I'm also think I'm going to go around the walls one more time because it can't kill off too much suction. Although it has been a bit time consuming, given it so many different layers of PVA with the roller. I was going to say something else, I've forgotten. Oh yeah, I was going to say, I've been allocated 3 days to get this room sorted out, including all the preparation and everything. So it's easily doable, and I'm not under too much pressure to get this done. I mean, maybe if you really wanted to go for it, do a couple of early mornings, late nights, and really push it, maybe you could get this done in 2 days. I think 1 day, no, not with all the scrap and everything, not for one guy by himself, not enough. Okay, let's move on to some beading up. Now, this window is just over 2.4, so this is a full 2.4. Look, we've got that little bit annoyingly at the end that needs joining onto. Now, in my experience, it's not, it's sometimes a little bit difficult with a massive long bit and then try and put a tiny little bit on the end. You're probably better off with 2 decent sized bits of bead. So what I am doing just on this window here is using these tin snips that you can get most places, probably about 20 quid or so, and they cut through the bead. I'll try and do this with one hand. So you do both sides, bend it, and then it snaps off. Now, I'm very rarely using a tape measure, so what I've done here is I just held the bead up at an angle like this. Okay, cut it, a little bit close. So that was my first bit that came off. And then I held the bead up here, and I was about that close, so then I just trimmed off the excess and held it in position. And I find, rather than using a tape measure, I'm generally much more accurate doing it this way. And now, of course, because I've cut this side now in that way, this is now my template for the other one. So all I need to do is hold that up against this full length of bead, and I'll probably overdo it and just cut a little bit longer and then hold it up and cut it really, really accurately by holding it up and doing it with my eye. So just before I did that, I thought, oh, there we go, look, I'm actually a tiny little bit tight there, but it'll be all right by the time you turn it around this way. So, we're really in there nice and tight. Just before I do use this as a template on that bead, I'll just check it on the other side, and as you can see, we got quite a bit more of a gap there. So something's out, probably the head, probably the sill, bit of both maybe. So I'm going to take account for that. So I am going to use that as a template, cut it a little bit further up the top, up here, so I've got the room, and then the off cut is going to be this big, pretty much, and that's the bit I'm going to get on there, and I'm going to get another full bead and cut that to suit as well. I'll show you what I mean. So there's my first one, that's my template. This is the bead to this side, which you can lean up there now, and this is the one that's slightly a little bit bigger to accommodate. See, now I can hold it up, there's hardly any waste. Now I can get my snips in there, or hold my thumb there, or get my snips and cut it perfectly to the perfect height I want. And that gives me this off cut, which is the bit that came off of that bead. So it's the opposite side, and I'm going to cut this edge down to the opposite angle so it fits in nicely. And I'm going to put it up there like so, and then I'm going to use another full bead and use the factory edge, the machine edge, okay, not the bit that I cut with the snips, because it tends to cause a little bit of a pimple there, and I'm going to use the factory edge and cut this bit area to suit and come up and meet a bigger body of bead. Okay, when putting beads up, very often, if I can, I'm using this stapler, and if you notice down here, we're going through the gaps, okay, and this is fresh bonding, so this is a little bit softer than this. This is Ceramite over sand and cement, and up here you can see I've done the same thing, but it's not actually got enough strength to get all the way in, but that's no biggie, because with a hammer, we can just crush that flat, okay? You can stick them up with a little bit of multi-finish or whatever material you got going around, or you can nail them up. And in this case, it's probably not a very good idea, but you won't be able to nail them up because, like I said, there's no bead on there at all. So if you try and put nails in, hold your bead up there and try and get a nail through it, what's going to happen is that's going to keep happening, okay? So nails on this isn't a very good idea. So it is a case of either sticking them or using this method. And what I tend to do as well, if there is any deviation or anything, I'll get a bit of scrim down this outside edge. I'll show you in a second. Another thing that you need to kind of like make sure you do if you are an experienced plasterer is that you need to be able to get this part of the bead out so it clears the back of the bead there, yeah? So you've got much more of a gap this side, okay? So you can just hold your trowel on there and make sure you've got the clearance. Another thing as well that you might get pulled up for if you're making YouTube videos about plastering is to get these stickers off because they're just annoying. Another little tip when you're beading up, if you're using my method of holding it up, you might be finding you've got a few of these sort of little bits and pieces. Very tempting just to throw your offcuts of bead on the floor or whatever. I tend to put them on the windowsill because, you know, if you leave that knocking around on the floor and later on in the day you actually kneel on it, you're not going to be very happy. So another little tip to when you are beading up is to get these corners absolutely perfect. You know, we can see here that we've got a bit of a ridge. So if you don't get these ridges out, you know, what's going to happen when you run your trowel across there, it's going to jolt off and it's going to cause a ripple and it's going to be very difficult for you to get it to look very nice at all. Now, the problem we've got here is this bead is on pretty much as tight as I can get it, but it's sticking out this much. So I need to adjust this bead to come out because this is in tight as it can get, that's in as tight as it's going to get, so this one has to be pulled out to meet perfectly good, which is another reason why it's a good idea to use these staples because they're not that permanent. If you put nails in through there, you got to get that nail out again, you know. And also when I have put the bead up, I haven't fixed right at the end because I did predict that I might need to pull that out a little bit, so I need to do it with two hands. I'm going to hold it with one hand in position, then I'm going to get my staple in through there, and hopefully that's going to pull it out on this line. This line's fine, okay? I need to come out to meet that. So it's absolutely perfect. Let's do that now. So here we go, look, you can see I've got a couple more staples in here and here, which is much closer, and I've got my scrim on either side. And this line here is perfectly good and is being held very solid. Same as this. Okay, so it's good. So I've got that little bit on there now, which is the off cut from this bead here, and now I'm going to hold a brand new bead up here and cut it to that measurement. So there we go, that is us beading up this window without a tape measure in sight. So let's have a closer look at that joint, see if I give that a tap, it's nice and solid. Get a couple more staples in there. I'm quite happy, that's going to look okay. It's quite a good idea as well to cast your eye down, something like that, and make sure it's not pimpling in or out, in case you're unfortunate enough to get it on a wobbly bit of the existing reveal. But as you can see, I had the same issue here. I had to pull this bead out and I've scrimmed everything up, and I have ensured that I've got ample clearance over all these scrims, like so. I had to be a bit conservative with the scrim because that's all I've got left, and I haven't got any more in the motor, so there you go. Now what I've got to do is just bead this, and this. Okay, let's have a look at this one. This is a bit more of a unique situation. Now I'm having trouble here because this reveal must be twisted somehow, and you can see the back of this bead is splaying over. I'm trying to get a fixing in here, but it's very difficult, and I need to kind of get this to pull round. So one of those little bits of offcuts there, I've just hammered that flat and we can get that in there. It's very difficult trying to record. There we go. As a bit of a packer, just to pull that little bit out to suit. There we go, I'll put my phone down and did it. So as you can see that I've got that bit behind there acting as a packer, which has pulled that into the position that I need it to be in. Okay, so here we go then. I think we are in a position to actually knock up some plaster now and start sorting this ceiling out, I think. So I've got my bucket here, which takes 2 bags. I'm going to fill that right up to the top. Get a little bit more than 2 bags in there, I think. And then I guess it will be some obligatory shots of me actually laying on plaster on the ceiling, and I'll probably choose some music from the YouTube library. I don't know what music I'm going to go for this time. Yesterday we used some sad piano music, which was very moving indeed. Today, I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm kind of feeling, we'll wait until what mood I'm in when we actually do the editing. I'm kind of feeling a little bit funky today, so let's have a look what they got. So here we go then, 20 by 5 carbon steel trowel by Marshalltown. I'm not going to go into one about today. If you want to know why I use such a large trowel, I did go into one a little bit more on the previous video, which is called When to Become One. My hawk is 16 inches and it's made out of magnesium by a company called Craft. These are all I use until the end, and I'll switch to a flexi trowel, a stainless steel one, which is about 16 inches. So I don't need any speed skims or anything. So let's get cracking, shall we? No pun intended. Crikey. That was tight. right down to the last little bit. There's coving going around there. Look, I didn't have enough to get that tiny little bit of corner. If there wasn't coving going, that would be stuff. But this ceiling actually put up a bit of a fight. It's quite undulated on this original plastered bit. Some bits were really deep, some bits were really thin, and it did take a little bit longer than I hoped to get that gear on the ceiling, because it did take the time to flatten things out and sniff things out with that larger trowel where it needs to be tied a little bit deeper and thinner, so it really forces you to really straighten up walls and ceilings because of its size, and its rigidity as well. It's not flexible at all. So if we come back to the beginning here, it's picking up a little bit. This is obviously the first coat, but it seems to be hanging enough for us to be able to get back on it without too much stress and bother, and get this flattened in. Again, just using that 20x5 carbon steel trowel by Marshalltown. So there we go, that ceiling is now complete. And to be honest with you guys, I don't mind telling you, I struggled with that. I just measured it out at 31.5 metres. Now I just did a ceiling on Saturday, which was pretty much the same size. And this doesn't look quite as big, but it turns out with that and this as well, it is. I mean, I just really got away with it by the skin of my teeth. Not so much because of the lack of suction or killed, but more because of the sun coming, you know, we always find it, you know, when the sun comes through, that time of the year when the temperature changes and suddenly shoots up and you've got more southerly wind and it's a drier air, it catches you out because you get used to putting so much on, and then that first sort of like really warm day catches you out. And that's exactly what's happened here, to be honest with you. It was a bit overcast first thing this morning, and then the clouds cleared off and the sun's come through and really warmed the whole room up. And yeah, I did struggle with it. Maybe on this job I could have done while using SBR and killing it even more suction than I did with the PVA, so trying to leave a little bit in there. And even, I've never used it, some of those little extra time sachets, could have done that. But on the bright side, I have got it finished a little bit earlier, even though I had to work a bit harder, and I was hoping not to work too hard today, to be honest. Maybe I'm fatiguing from working all the weekend, but yeah, I struggle with that. Maybe I'm getting to the age where a little bit of extra time won't hurt. You never know, in a parallel universe a long time ago, in a galaxy far away, I might well have done that and had a much easier time, but still be on the ceiling now. So I think I've had enough for today, and I am going to drive home. I'm not sure what the time is, but I think it's around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So all we've done today is get in here, PVA the life out of all these walls and ceilings, set the beads up, plaster the ceiling. That's it. So tomorrow we will make a start on the walls. Morning guys, it's day 2 at Shepperton. I think we'll call this video just, you know, because it's like general plastering, isn't it? It's not anything we're really particularly concentrating on. So to make it memorable, I think we'll call it the Stormtrooper plastering. Yeah, why not? That'll do. It's a fit quite nicely with the Death Star series as well, doesn't it? So yeah, day 2. What's the day? Tuesday over there. Bit chilly this morning. A little bit rainy last night, but yeah, I'm in a good mood. It's all right, it's fine. Let's go to work. Let's get started. Okay, whilst we're here, if I mention it, it starts to go down again. If you're regular to the channel, you know I'm always pumping up my tyre, because there's a screw in, well, there's a screw in the front one, but that's all right, that stays up, and there's a screw in the offside rear tyre as well. And I did go to try and get it fixed, but then matey said no, it's too close to the edge, and I was like, really? Why don't you just do it? And so I didn't complain. So every now and again I have to pump it up, and it's erratic. Sometimes I have to pump it up every day for like a week, and other times I don't have to pump it up all week, and it seems to be one of those weeks where I don't have to pump it up. I haven't pumped it up since, I can't remember, since probably the Death Star, since I got back from Oxford. So yeah, it's been about 4 or 5 days. I haven't pumped it up. But now I've mentioned it, tomorrow morning, you can bet I've jinxed it and it's going to be flat tomorrow morning. I'm going to need to pump it up. Okay, so it's 7:30 on Tuesday morning and we are back in the property that we are plastering now. Yesterday we had to go and get the ceiling on, which put up a bit of a fight, I must say. It was quite hard work. Today we are tackling the walls, and they have had a load of PVA put on them yesterday. Now all the information charts will tell you that you have to wait and go over PVA when it's tacky. You can't go over it when it's dry, but you can. If I wet my finger, because we put so much on there, I can feel that PVA. You can hear it. It's reactivating, it's becoming sticky again. So applying the wet plaster on it, even though this PVA was done yesterday, is going to make it tacky again. So yeah, PVA people will tell you not to do that. You can get away with it. So let's get on and start doing these walls then, shall we? Because we're not too sure, we haven't tackled any of these walls yet, so we're not too sure what the suction's like. The reason we PVA'd all this was to kill suction, because all this stuff, I mean, it's quite amazing really that this has never been painted. It must have been wallpapered all its life from when it was actually put on, although there is a bit of paint down there. So we've killed suction. So we're not too sure exactly how it's going to go, so we'll probably do well not to knock up too much of a bigger gauge to start off with, and we'll take on, well, we're not going to say a bag or so, and we'll take on a fairly easy wall just in case the suction is a little bit too much and we want the time to be able to get on it and sort it out before it starts stripping all the moisture out of the plaster and it becomes unworkable and you end up with a rough wall. So yeah, we'll get a small bit can first of all. If it looks like it's holding, then we can knock up more and push more, put more on. If it looks like it's pulling in, then we get the option to pull back and sort out what we've already got on. So, you know, we're going to be plastering with an element of safety here. You don't want to get yourself in trouble, pushing hard, pushing too far, too quickly. He's not the Plaster Master 74, he's a very naughty boy. And the reason I have been a very, very naughty boy is because I haven't been looking after my bucket. And recently I've been getting more and more lumps in my plaster, and I'm a bit out of breath because I've just had a workout cleaning out my setting bucket. Now I know they're coming from the bucket because the little lumps I was getting were very hard and very flat, so they're coming off the side and off the bottom of the bucket. So, I mean, I left it just scraped around yesterday, and sometimes it is, if you do want to clean something out, leave it really dirty because you need a body of gear on there. So if you leave it really dirty, when you pop it off, it pops up a lot of that residue which is built up. If you keep washing it, you're always going to get some sort of residue and build up, and every now and again you're going to have to take some attention to your bucket, your trowel, your hawk, or whatever it is, and clean it up, okay? Now, this is the end result. I should have shown you what it looked like before. I've taken my gauging trowel, my ball nose trowel, which is also very dirty. There's no really real reason for this to have to be kept spotlessly clean because of the type of work it does. So with a combination of scratching around, rolling the bucket on its side because there was such a build up in there, pushing the bucket, not hitting it with a hammer or anything so we'll crack it, pushing it so it pops it all off, etc, etc. And this is the end result we've got. The thing with these Rafina buckets, the bottom warps. So you get these little pockets that build up. Okay, in here, I've scrapped them off now, but yeah, the bottom's really warped, so the drill doesn't always get all the way down there. So yeah, I have been very naughty, and I've had to clean it out now. This bag was empty. Let's have a look. I'll pour it out so we can look, okay? That just came out the inside of my bucket, and that was stuck all around the sides. Feel much happier now. So again, I'm being exceptionally naughty. I left my hawk very, very dirty, lots of build up all over it. Sometimes it happens when you work by yourself, you know? You haven't got your labourer in or whatever. I had to get on the ceiling and I was done. I was like, do you know what, I'll sort that out tomorrow morning. So this is a magnesium hawk, it's quite big. The magnesiums I like because they hold their shape a lot better than the aluminium ones. The aluminium ones warp very quickly. But how I tend to clean this off, if you have left it built up for a while, it's just, again, just flex it. And if you've got a decent amount of build up on there, that should pop off quite nicely. And I do the best we can to get it inside the bag. There we go, that's going to have to do for today, I think. There's still a little bit left on there, but it's not wanting to come off, so we've got a lot off of there, so that'll do. I'll probably end up doing that next week, so stay tuned for that exciting footage of when I clean my hawk again. Here we go then, I'm going to knock up a bag, and it's as good a place as any to start. I'm going to take out this wall, and if I've got anything left over in the bucket, I'm going to start addressing reveals. I've got these two little breaks here, got lots of little places that are still available for me to use up the rest of the gear, or whatever it may be. You know, look, you think, well, I've got that wall on, I've got that much in the bucket, it's probably enough just to get that little bit on there as well. So that's how I like to take out little awkward bits and pieces. A little bit of awkward with a decent distance of bit as well, you know, and before you know it, you're all done, and you've hardly got any wastage, you're not chucking plaster away. Okay, so let's have a look what's happening. Now we're getting some feelers, we're using our spider sense to work out what's going on and how these walls are going to go. Now I've got this small gauge on, and what has happened is I put it on and I flattened in as I went along with the 20x5 carbon steel trowel, and I had enough to get across this wall. Then I looked in the bucket and I thought, yeah, I've got enough to get these reveals on, and then I looked in the bucket and I think, yeah, it looks like I've got enough to get these reveals on as well. So I like to get those sort of things out the way sooner rather than later. So then I went back to this wall after I got that all on, and I still had a little bit of plaster left in my bucket. And I started to flatten it in again, and I thought, do you know what? That suction is actually pulling that first coat off quite nicely. So then what I did, I used what was left in the bucket and I've laid it down, okay? I put the second coat on it because that suction had pulled that first coat, pulled the moisture out of it, stiffened it up, giving us the base coat that we need, and I was able to put that, even though it's the same plaster, it's the same mix, it's from the same bucket, that's behind in time. It's gone off faster on the wall than it has in the bucket. So that's what's allowed me, and this is where I'm saving time now, to lay it down. So I've laid it down with the same gear, and I've done the same to the reveals as well. And I'm at a point now where I'm touching it and I'm thinking, oh, do you know what? I might have enough time to get this wall on and bounce between the two of them. So now I know that wall's behaved like that. I'll knock up enough just to get this on and then probably lay it down again with the same gear. Now, I don't mind taking on live internals, I prefer them, but I'm not a big fan of live externals because I have to keep cleaning it off, but it is doable. If you are a little bit more inexperienced and you're not too keen on doing two internals, when I say live, obviously this side's wet. If we put this side on, this would be wet as well, so then you've got a live internal. I find it a lot easier to be able to straighten them up with my trowel. I don't use a corner trowel at all. But one trick to save yourself some time if you are having trouble is not to have a live internal. Have this wall on and then go and do your opposite wall. So when you do come to do this wall, you've got two hard edges to go up to. Some people find that easier. So I am tempted to push on with that and get that one on. This is pulling in. Unfortunately, the customer has just been in, had a chat with me, and brought me a nice cup of tea. So I think I'm going to just take my foot off the brake a little bit, have a bit of an easier one. I've been working, you know, I've I've got loads of time to get this done. If you really push for time, then you can balance it. It's like spinning plates. I can bounce between the two sets. This is why quite often it is a good idea to break up into smaller amounts. It gives you much more flexibility. If I'd knocked up 2 bags, I'd be on and I'd be, oh, do you know what, I'm actually struggling to keep up with this. If I had used SBR and killed all the suction, then yeah, I probably would be able to fly on the 2 bags all the way around because I've got no suction going on, but then I'd have to knock up again separately to put the second coat on. Whereas what I've done is actually embrace the suction, and then now I've decided, I thought, you know what, I'm going to use that suction to lay it down. So that's where I've saved time. Because I've left the suction in there, I've embraced it, I'm actually using it rather than killing it. But as a consequence, I'm only getting on a smaller amount, even though that smaller amount is going off quicker. So it is completely down to how you decide to work, how you like things to be done. If you want to kill the suction, use SBR, get bigger gauges on. If you want to kind of pip off little bits and pieces, and PVA, use that suction. So there you go, that's what's happening there. I'm gonna have a cup of tea. Okay, we are doing a 2-coat sponge float. You see it's pulling in quite nicely, but there's still a few little ripples and stuff in there. These things are great for sorting out things like that. If you're a little bit inexperienced, then again, I do suggest if you're just doing one wall or something in your own house or something like that, then do see if you can get hold of one of those. It can make life easier for you and give you a really good quality of finish. So this is quite a brand new one. I've only just rubbed it on the wall, so all we do is just wet the wall up a little bit and just briefly, all we're doing is livening up the surface, okay? As long as this sponge float is aquaplaning across the surface quite nice, there's enough water on there. And see, we're bringing it up to that texture, just livening up that top millimetre. And then we're going to get back on that pretty quick with our trowel and flatten it in. Now, I need to move quickly. I need to get across this wall and get it all done. Okay, so we have been all across that wall and we've applied that texture to the whole thing. And now we are going to come back with our trowel. And in this case, I'm still sticking with the carbon steel. If I can catch the texture in the light and then give it a pass with the trowel, that is what we're achieving. Now, this is kind of like, a lot of people turn their nose up at sponge floating, but it works really well. If you're an experienced plasterer and a bit old like me, then you will probably remember floating walls, okay, with hard wall and stuff like that. It's the same principle as using a devil float, okay, but we're bringing these floating techniques to multi-finish, and I think you get some really, really good results really quite quickly, and it also does speed you up a little bit. If you don't float walls, then the technique of floating is still relevant when you do your outside stuff, your sand and cement, so you can get your OCRs and stuff like that, which also do enjoy a sponge float being rubbed over them. So that's what we're doing. It's kind of like a rendering technique, but we're doing it on a smaller scale because the granules in render, sand and cements, are a lot thicker. So you'll tend to use a bit more of a coarser sponge float. This is why I really like these Wicks ones, because you can see they're about 10 mil and the foam is much denser. You haven't got those massive great big holes in it that get filled up with plaster and sand and cement and come out every time you want to use it, unless you spend ages cleaning the thing off. So I'm going to whiz across this wall. I've turned straight back around on it. I've sponge floated in, got all the way down to there, and straight away I've turned back round with a tiny little lick of water and my trowel, just to then close all that in. And I'm not taking any of this off, I'm pushing that back in the wall, so it is kind of like giving it a third coat. And like I say, that sponge float has buffed out a hell of a lot of ripples. So let's get back across it. Because you don't want to leave this is a bit of a dangerous area. So this is why sometimes it's better to have a couple of people. I can feel this is pulling in now, so I really need to stop. But the last thing you want to do is leave this texture in there too long and really struggle to get that out. Okay, so we've been across that wall and it's pulling in quite nicely, I must say it is. So now I'm able to leave it for a little bit because we've got it under control, we've got it flat again. And now I can do exactly the same to these reveals And then by that time, this will probably take another trowel. So there we go, I've just run across that wall and you can see it's got a nice sheen to it. It has troweled up rather nicely indeed, if I do say so myself. Yeah, that is another thing really. I think if you kill all the suction, sometimes it can trowel up a little bit sweaty, I find, but you know, it's not that much of an issue. When there is a bit of suction, it draws more moisture out and I find the trowels up a little bit nicer. That's just my opinion. So the time is about 20 past 10. So these walls and these reveals have taken about 2 hours. So judging by what these walls did, how they behave on the surfaces and all the other surfaces are exactly the same, I think now my plan of action, if this took about 2 hours, my next one is to get this wall on. I'll probably get this wall on, so I'm going to be knocking up round about a bag again, which isn't much to be honest with you. And then what's left over, I'm probably going to start nipping off some of these smaller little breaks here, and then take that awkward out of the way. So I've got these 2 end walls down, some of that awkward, and then for the last hit today, I'll probably take out this larger wall at the very end of the day, leaving me for tomorrow whatever's left in here, just a small area. So if I get that all done today, then it leaves me a much easier day for tomorrow, and it gives me time to get my tools out, get cleaned up, and leave it all spick and span as you might expect it, and appreciate it to be left. Okay, just to add, sorry, we can tell that this wall is pretty much set and come to the end of its life in the sense of being plastered is because we've got these little brown spots. So this means the wall is starting to set, okay? And these are the thinner areas which are starting to go first. Eventually the whole wall will turn this colour. Also, you know the wall is complete because this is the type of residue we're getting out of there now. This is what's called fat, and it's all slime. It's not much of it coming out. It's pretty watery. It's not much good for anything. When you first start applying your wet brush, when it's earlier, the residue that is coming out is a lot grainier. You've got the particles from the plaster in it, and that can be used to push back into the wall as necessary, filling holes, whatever. So at this point it's probably a good idea to clean these beads off, and let's just have a little look there. Look, that's where that joint is when we put the machine edge together. And now it's plastered. You won't be able to detect that at all. So let's have a quick look at these internal corners up here. I tend not to use a corner trowel at all. Nothing wrong with them, I just prefer not to use them. What I like to do is use a little wet brush, a little inch brush there, right at the very end. Do all the work with the trowel and just finish off with that. So here we go then, managed to get this little bit on around here. I've got that little face on, got this little side on, and as you saw, this back window and this window wall down here as well. And we're going to sit with that as we did with the previous ones. I've laid it down with the same plaster, and then when it's ready, it shouldn't be too long away, sponge float, trowel it up, see it home. Okay, that's all those other bits done. They're all laid down and troweled up and starting to brown off. Still need to clean the beads off, etc, etc, but we'll have time to do that. So these hits, doing it in this fashion, using the suction as the way we are, they are pretty much bang on 2 hours each. So let's turn around and get this wall on sooner rather than later. Like I say, because 20, I do like the fact that it's going on, okay? That's how much I'm loading it. Take your time, put it on nice and neat. Well, so you can load the whole lot up, pretty much there. Using the whole length of the trowel to flatten in as we go. Okay, so using that same technique of knocking up enough for the first and second coat, getting that first coat on, flattening, and as you go along, going and doing something else, letting the suction pull that first coat in, and then use exactly the same plaster to give it a second coat. And that's exactly what's happened here, and this is the condition we are in. Not only did we get that on, we also had enough to pick up what can be considered the rest of the awkward on this little job. So as well as this wall, we've got this is live, and then this little face as well. We picked all this up on the second hit. So what we managed to do is, by using this technique, each hit has been pretty much bang on 2 hours from start to finish. So we have been able to fit in 3 hits, okay? 3 2-hour hits. So 2, 4, 6 hours, okay? Now, by breaking it down and shortening the setting time, the drawback is you can't get so much on. So if we was an SBR guy and we SBR'd all this and killed all the suction right down, then we would probably take the hits up to the full 3-hour setting time, for argument's sake. Let's say it's 3 hours. So in 2 3-hour hits, if we use SBR, you'd probably be achieving pretty much the same amount of meterage as we've achieved here already, because you've got the extra time on the set which allows you to get more walls on. So you would have got half of this on in one hit, the other half in another hit. I've broken it up into 3 2-hour hits. 6 of one, half a dozen the other. It is however you want to work, really. That's just how it went today. Okay, that's our lot as far as plastering is concerned for today. I've trimmed, cleaned up the beads, but tomorrow I've left myself a very, very easy day, which is just literally these 3 walls. So 1 hit really, everything else is done. So that'll give me plenty of time to have a really good tidy up in here and make sure it's all looking lovely jubbly and all that. As we can see where we started, if I was explaining earlier, this wall has set. You can see it's mottling and changing different colours. It's gone dark, and now because the temperatures are up recently, it is starting to dry out. So when it returns back to this pale colour, which it's starting to go in these thinner areas, that is when it's okay to paint. So you see this one was the second lot of plastering we hit, and you can see it's all turned dark. Same as this one down this end, and this is the last wall we hit, so it's only just got the dark patches coming through now. It's Wednesday morning. Don't know what time it is. It's after 6 before 7. It's 20 to 6. Let's go to Shepperton and finish off that job, shall we? Yay! So here we are then, back in the room, and we have these 3 walls to get completed today. So quite an easy task, and it's going to give us enough time to get all the rest of the room and all the clearing up done as well. Now, this is the only plasterboard wall in the whole room, so we're probably going to change our tactic a little bit different. The strategy will be, I think, to knock up enough plaster to get all this on. But the first wall we're going to put on is the plasterboard wall, because I'm expecting it not to be pulling off. The suction is going to be less on this than it is on these bone dry plastered walls, even though we've prepped them up and primed them with a good few coats of PVA. We've got some damage to the top where the cove-in used to be. For some reason, they floated it, then coved it, and then they set it after the cove-in was put up. So not the usual sort of thing, but that's just what happened. So this cove-in is all being replaced as well. So it will all be coved. So yeah, let's get on. Knock up the same gear, put this wall on, then I'll probably put this one on, have a look how it's all going, and then I might get away with using the same gear. So then I probably might lay this one down, and lay this one down last. Yes, it's true, I do like my multi a little on the chubby side. First wall on. The second wall is on. But look what's happened. I've got that left in the bucket there, and I've got that on my hook. Nowhere near enough to get that last wall on with the same gear. My targeting was way off. So what I'm probably going to do is keep that, knock up some more with some clean water, and maybe knock up enough to get this wall on now. And maybe, because I'm expecting this one to suck in, knock up enough with this bucket load, get that wall on, have enough to put a tight coat on this, and maybe another tight coat over this with the same gear last of all. More plaster. Yeah. Stick some on there, shall we? So there we go, we put it on that wall. We've got this much left in the bucket, and I've got a good hawkful there. So let's get a tight coat over this side, which is, I mean, there's not too much difference in it, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's pulling in. Second coat is on this wall now. This one over here, so get your bearings. This is the plasterboard wall at the back, and this is the one that went on. I'd say that plasterboard wall is a little bit further in time. It's firmer than this, which I just put on. So remember, this wall is this plaster. So I'll put that wall on with this plaster and use this plaster to put the second coat on this wall. Now, if you do notice, look, I did notice this is really drying out here, and that's part of the internal house, and it's a stud wall. So I think there's some heat from the other side, the other room, which is bleeding through into this area, which you can tell by the way that the ceiling is drying out. Look, it's much drier here than it is over here. Okay, so this back wall has had its second coat, and if I do say so myself, look how neat that is, isn't it, eh? Okay, so this trowel, the 20x5 carbon steel by Marshalltown, has visited this wall twice. We put it on, flattened in as we went along, then we've laid it down with a second coat, flattened in as we went along. Okay, so, you know, the amount of time that you save getting the wall in a neat condition at an early stage is much more beneficial, I think, than flying along with a little trowel and start all back at the beginning, doing the speed skimming, blah, 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 blah. So it looks like we might have just enough, and this may have gone just enough so that we can get a tight coat over this last wall now with the same gear that put on the first coat. So there we go, that wall has had its second coat. It's all been laid down, it's all had its second coat. We've got that much plaster left over, and we haven't got a home for it, so it can just sit there on our hawk, just in case there's any accidents and we need a little bit to repair anything in case you nick it or anything like that. So yeah, all we need to do now is just chill, keep an eye on it, start clearing up our tools. It's pulling in, actually, it's pulling in nice. Let's check this one. Yeah, they're not, do you know what, there's not much difference in all of these. Yeah, this one's definitely wetter. Okay, I think I am going to take the sponge to these. I've given it a few minutes. It's pulling in quite nicely. And it looks like the order will be, since we put it on in a bit of a weird way, remember this wall went on first, but the order is due to the way that we knocked up and put the second coats on. It's going to be this wall first, then this wall, then this wall, and we're just going to keep repeating round until the walls are completed. So just a quick reminder how we're bringing up this surface, how we're livening it up. A little bit of water with your wet brush. Sponge float, this one from Wix, slightly denser, it's not coarse like a lot of the ones that are used for rendering. And just gently rub that and let that smooth. If it's sticking anywhere, just add a little bit more water. And we don't want to overwork it, we're just livening up that very surface. Okay, and what that's doing is pulling it back slightly, and it's taking out, buffing out any little indiscrepancies like this. Okay, so we have been across the whole wall and sponged the whole thing up. And probably the most important thing to do when you are sponge floating, if you are sponge floating or trying this out, is don't get too far ahead of yourself. Because what the worst thing is that can happen is you leave it too long in this condition and you haven't got time. It's gone off too much and you're really struggling to get them out. So what we're going to do is treat each wall separately, sponge it all the way and turn straight back round with a trowel. And then this is the residue we're getting out, and we're not taking that off the wall, we're feeding that back in. Okay, so we've been across all these walls now and sponge floated them and flattened them in on the second coat. Now, some guys I've noticed do go straight to the flexi trowel, straight from that textured rub up. I prefer to stick with the rigid trowel just for that first one. You can see the condition we're in. I like, the rigid, stern, tough trowels with a straight edge. Once you've got it into this sort of condition, then we can start looking at using these softer, more flexible stainless steel trowels to start closing the surface in. We've dealt with ripples, we've dealt with the flatness, we've planed it off with the hard rigid trowel. Now we're going to really compress that surface and smooth it over and give it that real shiny skin that everybody likes to see on a freshly plastered wall. Okay, so I just bounced with the flexible trowel across these walls in the manner I suggested earlier, which was this one, and then this one finally. And I dare say, I believe this one is actually getting in front of this one in time, in sense of how soon that's going to be kind of finaling up. Must be to do with the suction rate. So the order is probably going to change now from when we visit next time, from this wall first to this wall, and then back to this one. So there we go. We are all complete and time is 10 o'clock in the morning. Let's see if I can get out of the light. You can see, it's always hard to show the quality on camera because it always looks the same, but we can get a bit of a close up. We see how those granules are all closed in now. Yeah, it's all looking good. It feels nice and smooth. So, those walls went down in 2 hours, 10 o'clock in the morning. We was getting on about 8 o'clock, knocking up, putting them on. So, when I was coming and doing the sealing in there, I was cursing a bit because of the high suction. I was thinking maybe I would have been better off SPR. And then when we came to the walls and we had that high suction level again, we had to change our method slightly to accommodate the high suction and broke it up into smaller gauges, but was able to fit 3 small gauges in rather than 2 bigger gauges. So I didn't mind it on the walls, and then today when it's just these 3 walls, I'm really happy that I PVA'd them because they've gone down that quickly. So, swings and roundabouts, doesn't it? So all that's really left to do today is get these doors and windows open, get some ventilation through here now. I tend to keep the doors and windows shut, just the ventilation can send things off a little bit faster. And, the suction was already really high anyway, so I wanted to hold it back a little bit and sit in there and, just keep the temperature as it is and not have warm air coming through. But now we're going to clear up, we're going to get the air through and it's going to start drying out. So all that's left to do today now is just get tidied up, get out of here, get home, enjoy the sunshine that seems to be peeking through, and I will get on and start editing this video. I had a little go at it last night, some of it, and then obviously I've got to add this little bit on today. So I'm going to assume that I will be able to get this up and running for you to view this evening, which is Wednesday. Yeah. Quite a long one, 3 days working on video. It's going to be a long video again. Sorry about that. If you do wish to know a little bit more about sponge floating and my ideas of when and you can and you can't do it, when you can get away with it, do have a look down the playlist. I believe there's a video called To Sponge or Not to Sponge, where I go right into one. I draw diagrams and all sorts of things. So if you want to know more about sponge floating, when to do it, what timings are and stuff like that, have a look down the playlist, To Sponge or Not to Sponge. So there you go, we're pretty much all done in here now. Sun's drying out pretty quickly. Coving is quite damaged in the first place. They've got a lot of work to do on it. It looks a little bit unsightly in places, but it's kind of like where I've brushed it in and it's filled little holes and chips in it. So yeah, they're happy to deal with that. So that's none of my concern. I've not been asked to do anything to that at all, other than what's happened to it. So yeah, let's get off out of it. And just look, wash down out here as well because of footsteps and stuff. You know, these things help.